20 years ago, I saw Coleman Barks give a reading, and that man looked so sexy as he like opened up his reading glasses and put them on. I'm not gonna look nearly as cool as he did, but I just thought I should share that. I really would love to be that cool.
You were
All right.
saying in that moment.
Okay, now I can see. Okay. The tongue is the spine's first leaf. Forests of language surround it like a mole. The tongue burrows through the earth of speech. Like a bird, the tongue flies in arches of the written word. The tongue is tethered and alone in its mouth. And I chose that because whenever I'm asked to give an artist talk, now I can see you guys looking up, I realize, how to find a narrative from decades and decades of solitary work, And so I try to find threads, and some of them are, as thin as silk, and others are as, thick as the cables that hold the bridge in San Francisco, that are relevant, basically, to the topic today, like words and poetry in particular. And really trying to figure out, giving as honest an answer as I can about why I sculpted what I call a portrait of a poem. So while this is a portrait of a human being that does reside on Earth's face, the mood and the energy really derives from the poem found in my good friend Marc Zegans' latest book called Lyon Street, which are a series of poems that he wrote about coming of age in San Francisco in the 70s. So, but why? I was really asking myself and wanting to give that, I guess, as a gift to you guys. And the answer really surprised me. It's because basically my entire life with art has been pretty much based on a lie, or maybe a secret. But I say lie because a lie is more perhaps active than secret. One can hide a secret, but one can't hide a lie so much. That's more of a verb. And the lie was, I really love reading. Which I know in this time particularly where we're asked constantly to defend the right, just to have a library. Like to say I love reading seems like duh, But what I'm telling you guys is a story that started in 1985, which was a very, very, very different time than where we are today. And at that time, when I was in the public Georgia education system, I was sort of a marked man, or boy, whatever you would call it. I was discovered that I had some dyslexia, and so if you read my permanent record, which I got and then burned, it was marked, that this student will never learn how to read. Don't waste time on this student. And we were, required to read all these things that were most of the time quite boring. But no one ever asked the question, even though I tested poorly on reading skills. I was never asked, do you enjoy or are you inspired by words? And if someone had asked that, it would have been a resounding yes. I was a secret reader. I wasn't allowed, to get the books that, the smart kids were allowed to read. So I would sneak incredibly heady, sometimes medical text, history books, anything. I remember my grandmother, who actually died today, it was a very old house. 4 generations of stuff was in this home. And I would sneak around and find volumes of weird books, bound in leather and gold lettering. And they were 1880s novels of the Romantics, and I was dyslexic. My ability to comprehend a lot, from reading was not the greatest bandwidth. However, I would find one phrase, that just made me weep, And if you fast forward, that's really where all of my art comes from. I've never created a sculpture sans words. When I first started making portraits of people, I would always have something, like some word that would act as an anchor. Because when you're an artist, particularly in a medium that very, very, very few people work with, the possibilities sometimes are too vast. We really need like little kite strings attached to something, no matter how high we're flying. And for me, it was words. And so every little sculpture I had would have at least a word, like hope, desire, fear, sadness, horniness. It's something that would kind of encapsulate what I was doing. But then that began to expand. And when I was thinking about it, I realized what I was doing, I was actually using rock and roll as a filler for poetry. So I would find a song that would make me cry, not the music so much, but the words. I mean, God, the words. Like Grace Slick said once, it's hard to imagine that the sun was the warmest thing he ever found. I mean, I can't even say that without crying. That one line has inspired so many sculptures. And so what this is I began to bridge two universes. With words, I was able to find a sense of community and connectedness, into a world that was so much bigger than my own. And if you get big enough, you're going to find other people that are just like you, eventually. People that know your pain, people that know your desires and joys. But then I always sculpt portraits. Why? It's because I love humanity so much. And I love finding those moments sort of beyond the mask, Like if you've ever been on a date and someone's like, it's going really great, but then if you notice how they look when they're fumbling for their keys and unlocking their car, they're no longer thinking about presenting anything. They're just doing this rote behavior, that is so banal, but that's where you see them for that brief moment in time. And that's how I find my models. People where you can see just a tiny crack, and I bridge it with this other universe, the universe of words. And so I hope this makes sense, but that's what I do. And I've never articulated this until really tonight, to be honest with you guys. But it's totally true. Like I've never, ever made a sculpture. I've never talked about it because I wasn't supposed to be a reader. I did one semester of college. I barely made it through high school. But damn, I love reading, and I love not so much maybe individual words, but I love phrases, and I just love those combinations that suddenly turn a dark room into a light room. Where just that empathetic understanding. So with that, I'll go ahead and read the poem that inspired the sculpture. And then we'll move over here and we'll just all share the words that we brought tonight. Oh, hang on. This is new for me, so I'm not nearly... So the poem is called North Beach, and each of these poems are about kind of a place in San Francisco. And it was really cool, actually, if I can brag for a second. So I was able to convince his publisher to put in a map, because I love maps. And they were like, oh, we can you just go online. We'll have something online. And I used a poetic phrase. I said, I want to be able to read this book while sitting in the grass. I don't want to have to leave that moment to go and do the research to really appreciate the poem even more. And that phrase got this map, which is awesome. It took them a long time to make it too. Okay, so this poem is called North Beach. Give it. And if you, so you can move the shadow around. So with my work, so the sculpture itself is an object in and of itself. And that object encapsulates the one line that really, really inspired the piece, which is etched on the canvas, which is, tonight I turn and remember. But it being a poem, there's other emotions infused, the poem is not just, like a mono feeling. So what I do is I use the wire almost like a prism, and it casts an infinite number of shadows, and I literally sculpt the shadows to fit all the other emotions. So there's another piece, for instance, where the line is, Becky's puking in the bathroom. So I actually made the shadow look totally disgusting. It took a long time, but it was so cool. So I just want you to see if you can just, some are more successful than others. But hopefully you'll be able to appreciate the nuance, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. Okay. Tonight, I'm a mourner for where the Keystone Corner was on Vallejo, where I heard Art Blicky play and Denny Zeitlin say, I'm gonna do a number with Charlie Hayden on the bass. Tonight, I turn and remember the Spaghetti Factory one December, flamenco dancers stomping in the back, ruffled dresses, black heels going clack against the faded floor. Memory, a paramour, fading in the mist. Of the one I kissed at the Savoy Tivoli. I may have mispronounced that, sorry. Of the one I kissed at the Savoy Tivoli. Now only reverie, lost in the Grant Street bustle, a slot shop hustle, across from the postcard store, selling remembrances of Evermore. In the land where jackalopes play, giant bunnies hop away. Edgerton's bullets stop, they say, as I try to grapple with what was that's actual, and what's at best blue smoke curling at the old Trieste.